Hey, it's Vladimira.
And I'm Nektarios.
And this is Naked by the Future Farm.
Join us as we strip entrepreneurship to its vulnerable core.
Welcome, Lottie, on Naked. It's wonderful to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, Nektarios. It's good to see
Vladdy.
you as always.
Hi, Lottie.
Hello.
So in our usual routine ritual, let's start with sort of locating ourselves because we are indeed in some way a global podcast. So Lottie, let's start with you. Where in the world are you?
I am in Dubai by the marina, looking out over some palm trees and some big rain puddles because there's been a crazy storm. But I'm here for 2 weeks having some meetings and spending some time with my partner who is out here for work.
Oh, it's a beautiful place to stay, actually. Where are you based?
So East London, which is not, and this is February when we're recording. So rainy, cold East London. Turns out Nektarios and I are very close to each other. We've realised that we're basically London neighbours. But I thought I'd take the opportunity to get some February sun and do a bit of self-care out here.
Oh, good. Good for you. So you are in Dubai, which usually is much closer to my home in Pakistan.
Yeah, exactly.
Our naked listeners know. So I actually swap with you. So I'm in London, in Wimbledon right now, where we have one of our homes with Nadim. But it's really nice. I've been enjoying actually the refreshing weather. And I was saying to Nektarios that, he's rolling his eyes. Don't roll the eyes, man. When you live in a country like Pakistan, exactly. You know, the ability to actually take a deep breathe in and out and have the fresh air, it's a privilege.
Is the pollution in Pakistan crazy? I lived in Delhi for 3 years and
you know what you're talking about. It's insane. It's literally you go around and you have this like heavy feeling of like I can't breathe, but you keep breathing sort of, in a very shallow, so that has been something in the last 5 years that I really started to appreciate. Nektarios, you came from a beautiful place of sun and feta cheese.
So I'm in Lottie's neighborhood. I'm back home in Shoreditch. I was looking at your backgrounds and you were talking about kind of the weather, etc. So I'm in Shoreditch. I'm in London with a reasonably okay weather today, actually. But our listeners know that we have this new production company that encourages us to create a bit more visuals in the background. So every time we record, I have to move some plants in my living room to make it a bit more green. And this morning it just didn't work. So I'm so glad that this one now is there. And it's got a little red thing because it's Chinese New Year and my husband's Chinese.
Oh, guys, I definitely didn't get the memo about the escaping.
Don't worry.
I've got like a really rubbish Airbnb flat in Dubai.
It's a very
authentic.
Nice flat. It's exactly authentic. I actually covered the authenticity. So I use our Future Farm background because I was also like, today is not good. So Nektarios, I think you're certainly the winner of the very zen and sort of Future Farm,
Wonderful.
But until yesterday I was in Athens and I did a little bit what you're doing, Lottie, which is I just took myself away for a week, work from somewhere else, change of scenery, bit of an energy boost in the dark winter of the UK. And it was wonderful because it was unseasonably warm. And we took a day off and did a nice little trip to Delphi, where the Oracle used to live, which was wonderful and quite spiritual.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So you're in good spirits.
Yeah.
Which is nice. I can feel the energy. Actually, speaking of energy, I was thinking, Lottie, I have this direct question that I wanted to start with, but I'm thinking actually, let's do it differently. Let's check in with each other. I know we checked in on the location and stuff, so that's box ticks. But how are you doing? Like, what period of life and like sort of well-being are you in right now? Like, what's sort of the state of Lottie's being right now?
I'm really, really good. And thank you for asking that question because it does give you that half second to actually ask yourself. Yeah, I'm really good. I am away from London, which helps, but I think I left London in quite a good place. I've been really looking after myself, which doesn't mean loads of well-being. It just means like lots of work that I find really rewarding, lots of sleep. And I feel optimistic about this year and I feel very in control. So I'm in a really good place. How are you guys?
That's so beautiful. And congrats on it, that you are also actively nurturing your self-care and, the self-love that's connected with it. So good for you.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. Good to hear.
Yeah, I think it is. I think we spend so much time talking about how we're busy and how there's too much going on, and like using all this quite default language that actually, if you're not in those places, you need to really recognize that that's not the case and really celebrate it. And also like create some good role models. Like we don't need more role models to stress people. We need role models of people who are handling it.
Yeah, and more of those on the headlines of Forbes and other magazines.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Where are the
saying
headlines, which is like, I'm fine and happy. Not like that doesn't get any press.
This is not the 5 a.m. club. No, indeed. But that's really like genuinely, authentically, really, really good to hear. And I think we're getting the energy. I'm getting energy from both of you, actually, which is very good. Sort of settling in, which I think is a beautiful start. So we were thinking like how to start this.
How are you, Lottie?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. I thought that, like now all my energy is sort of channeling towards.
Not so quick.
Not so quick. I'm also good. I went through a rough patch health-wise in the last week or so, and I think it just makes you realize, like, I know it's such a cliche to say like health is everything, but when you don't have it, you really feel it. So I was just saying today in the morning with my team, because I started like 6 a.m. because they're in Pakistan, so time difference. I was in a really good spirits and everyone saw it and they were asking me like, what happened? And I was like, well, I can eat and go for a walk, which, when you don't have it because you can't move. And yeah, it feels really good. So I'm taking it in very small portions and day by day. So today is good. As I said, I'm enjoying the fresh weather in London. So spirits are good. And I'm also really excited about this conversation right now. So that's like the immediate sort of state of being. But yeah, so all good. So let's finish the circle. So Nektarios, but you seem well.
Oh, do I?
Yeah, that's the energy I'm getting. But no. maybe we do what you did with your friend, like, okay, let's crack.
No, I'm good. It's been December and January really difficult. And there was a breakthrough moment in mid-December, which changed everything. So since then, I kind of walk around going, it's weird not feeling stressed. It's weird not feeling really the battery on zero. And I'm in a period with my startup in a sort of bit of a limbo period, but very optimistic limbo period. And it's really just a question of working through the next phase of my business, which defines my well-being, because it's, as we all know, so closely linked. But no, right now I'm actually in a really good place because my calendar is not overflowing. I'm not feeling stressed. I'm not feeling worried. Yeah, it's good. It's good. And it's a Monday morning and we're talking and life is good.
Nice. So hopefully this is spreading, through the waves of the naked. So Lottie, when I was listening to some of your conversations that you did on other podcasts, which are really interesting and intriguing, there was one thing that really resonated with me personally. And we chatted about this a little bit before we started recording, which was related to this, a little bit of an overachiever identity maybe, or baggage that you mentioned, and I relate to it, that it's something that I feel like I've been carrying for a long time. But you said something really interesting and I wrote it down. One, you were saying about having a very high bar for yourself, and then anything other than extraordinary equals failure. I'm not sure whether you would still use the same words, because sometimes we say something in a certain phase of our lives, but when I listened to this and heard you say this, it felt very heavy, like it literally landed in my stomach. And I was really curious to ask you this question of like, how such a notion, a narrative, or a belief has had impact on your life and well-being in the sort of over the years, or is it still the case?
Yeah. So I think a lot of my mental health is about actively managing underlying belief systems and managing my relationship to external pressures. I think I've said that in a really unnecessarily cerebral way. Like, all I mean by that is there's loads of stuff in my subconscious that I'm dealing with constantly. And at the moment, I'm absolutely dealing with it and I'm absolutely fine and I'm loving life. There are times where I'm less capable at doing that. it's interesting hearing you say that back to me, because I think, oh my God, is that what I think? Wow, that's quite depressing. But I do think it. So does that mean that I every day walk around telling myself that because I'm not extraordinary, I've failed? No. But I do know that there's a voice in my head that thinks that. There's a part of me that is coded that is a truth. And I've worked to manage it and offset that narrative. And I'm doing that constantly. But it does affect a lot. So on like a daily basis, my relationship with exercise is always quite a good litmus test for it. So I work out most days. I'm pretty fit, but I'm definitely not an athlete. And I don't sit well with that. Like, I can't leave a gym class and not be the best and feel okay about myself. I'll have the voice will go into a dark place, and then I'll consciously pull myself back out of it and say, like, this is ridiculous. You're running a business. You're a daughter and a friend and a sister and all of these other things. You're not an athlete. And so why is it relevant to you whether you are the fittest woman in this room? Like, it's a completely irrelevant metric to your conscience. But I have to recognize that my subconscious is kind of screaming at me. And that's, I use that example because I go to the gym every day. And so I go through it every day. So like on a daily basis, I'm like, oh, hey, voice, you're still there in little so-and-so. And I think it plays out in other ways with work. But again, I've got this like my subconscious is screaming at me for not having built something bigger and more extraordinary. But my conscience is very clear and like logical about why I'm proud of the constraints I put around my own work.
Sounds like a constant battle. Is it still?
Yeah, and I think, but I think the way I'm describing it sounds really hard work, and it's not that bad. Like, it's in check. It's constant and it's a tension, but it's not this war. And there are times where it really is a war, and there's times where I like lose that war. And that's where I'm like hysterical or like completely out of action. And yeah, there are absolutely moments where I like flip out, and it can be for like seconds or minutes or days where I like lose that, where it becomes a war and I lose the war. But most of the time it's just like a little tension that I'm kind of managing. And I think lots of people manage tensions like that. I just think I'm quite aware of it. So I don't think it's unique. I think it's just formed in my brain.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think it's actually very relatable. And I was thinking also, Nektarios, we talked about this many times before in conversations, is would you be okay to go in some of the triggers that are more related to your identity as a founder and builder?
Yeah.
So what would be some of those triggers that put you off, like on your journey of building your business? And they would create this, what you called a war potentially for your mind, and this battle.
Okay, I have real triggers around upsetting people. So if I have to give difficult feedback or have a difficult conversation, I will go insane. Like with a predictability that's like quite ridiculous. I know that if I have to deliver a hard message to one of my team, I will spin out for a few days before and after. Like, it will knock me out for 7 days. And that's something I'm really like actively trying to seek more support on, because it's actually just becoming so problematic. I just can't afford the time and the energy loss it takes. So that's one. And that's definitely coming from like a people-pleasing tendency and a real desire to be liked and to be kind. And kind is a hugely important operating principle for me. And I know that being honest is more kind, but God, it feels more kind in the moment to just be nice. Like, I know that you're meant to do the hard thing, but God, I just want to say the nice thing. And everyone I work with, I care about so deeply. I get really emotionally invested, which I think is a huge strength of mine as a leader, and that I am truly empathetic, but makes it really difficult for myself. So emotional stuff is one. Financial stuff, which I've talked about before. I have a real like blocker around money and around stress related to money. And I hear other founders talk about like, you know, struggling to meet payroll and being at the end of their runway. And I just think that would floor me. there's no way I'd be able to leave the room. Like, I cannot go close to that level of financial anxiety. So yeah, I had a panic attack in a leadership meeting late last year, looking through some quite basic financial reporting. And that to me didn't really feel surprising. It was like an event that to the room was like, what is going on? And to me it was like, oh, this is a completely logical conclusion to the normal level of anxiety I feel every time I have to look at spreadsheets about my own money, not spreadsheet. I'm quite commercially strong. So I'm very comfortable looking at numbers that are someone else's numbers. But when you put that into like my own livelihood, like, oh, that's a recipe for a bit of a car crash. And I think there's a trigger around tension with, it's all to do with upsetting people. So if someone feels like I haven't given them quite what they want, I'll find that very difficult to sit with. So yeah, people pleasing and a difficult relationship with money. Yeah, that's what it all comes down to.
It's interesting hearing your triggers.
Yeah.
But what people probably also want to hear is, what does it actually mean? Because you're using interesting ways of describing what it does to you.
Okay.
But the reason we became aware of you is because you've actually been very vocal about a period of your life where this got quite extreme. So if you allow us, maybe we can go down that path, and you can talk a little bit about what happened actually with these things compounded, and you had a major mental health experience.
Yeah, absolutely happy to talk about it. I think it's really important to talk about it as much as possible, which is why I say yes to every opportunity like this to tell the story. I have always been highly strung, anxious, neurotic, like all of those words that get thrown around. And some of those are just kind of words of the day. And some of them are words that I think overachieving women get labeled with. But I was always really tense, and always really tense. And yeah, had like dealt with this my whole life, really thought it was who I was, thought like being stressed was kind of my identity. And then about 3 years ago now, kind of during COVID, in the early stages of building a business, I had what I now am very clear was a breakdown, where my brain stopped working entirely. And the order of events is a real muddle to me. Every time I tell this story, it feels more foggy, not more clear. But there was a moment where I collapsed in the shower and couldn't stand up. And there was a moment where I sent a message to a woman who was a coach, sort of, I don't know what the message said, but it was like an SOS, like, I'm not okay message. And then I spent basically the best part of 6 weeks in bed, and much of that time was staring at a wall. And then some of that time was like reading 10 pages of a book, and then as I kind of begun to rebuild a bit, it was walking to the lamppost at the end of the road, and then walking around the park once, and real baby steps. But I was pretty unable to speak for most of that time, very physically weak, and like fully mentally and physically broken. And I didn't think that you could break your brain. I know you can break a leg, but it had not occurred to me that it was possible to do that. And I knew that breakdowns happened, and I knew that mental health was a thing, but I didn't really engage with what that actually was, nor did I have any idea that it would be something that would affect me. Kind of in that way that we think, like, we hear about cancer, but we don't think we're going to get it. We hear about mental health, but we think we're okay. But I honestly didn't know that that was what it was. And it changed my life, because I realized that it was incredibly dangerous, and that it could break again, and it could be harder to fix. Like, the break could be bigger. And I've been really committed since then to try and talk about it wherever possible, because I think that no one should be as naive as I was. Like, these things can happen, and they will happen if you keep pushing. And I don't want anyone to go through that with their, like, you go through that, but go through that with your eyes open. Like, I can't stop anyone pushing themselves to that place, but I can at least like try and spread the word that that's what might happen. And I think it's really important that there is a bit more understanding of this stuff so that we can support people better during the process. So I was just so lucky that I was near someone who'd been through their own comparable experience and had the language and the tools to be able to support me in that process. And I've been really fortunate that since that event, I've been able to play that same role for other people, which I consider a huge privilege. But I think those people are quite rare. And I think there must be a huge number of people either trying to support someone through this with none of those resources, or going through this process surrounded by no one who has any idea how to help. And that's what makes me seek out any opportunity I can to sort of spread the word.
I really appreciate it. We would like to come back to the support bit, but when you started talking about your experience, I was wondering, so falling in the shower or realizing that you actually can't really string a sentence together, were you aware what was happening to you? Was it something that you could, so how did you actually realize this is what's going on?
I don't think I did. I think I got an email. Again, these events in my head all happen on the same day, but they make zero sense to happen on the same day. It must have been over like a week. I remember getting an email, and I was at my parents' house, which is why I know it was not in the same place as the shower, because that was on the other side of London. But I was at my parents' house and I got an email, and my brain, you know, if you read something and you need to do something about it, you can't help yourself, but you start processing the information. So your brain starts going, okay, well, I'll talk to this person about this. And I'll, you know, like you're kind of, the cogs just start whirring. Nothing happened. There was just white noise, like on a TV when it goes all black and white and bobbly. And this like crunching noise, just like a crunching hum. And the cogs weren't moving. And I would just remember being like stuck in this moment. So I had no idea what was going on. I just knew that something was not working. And then I went to go and get a smear test, and I was uncontrollably sobbing. And the poor male doctor thought it was because I was really stressed about the smear test. It's like, mate, I literally don't care like that. It's just the last thing that I'm worried about right now. And he was like, I'm so sorry. Do you want a biscuit? And I was like, no, I don't need a biscuit. I need my brain to work. Do whatever you need. And so, no, I didn't know what was going on. I knew that I had no label for it. I had no capacity to even consider labeling it. So the work involved in, I wonder what's going on, maybe I'll Google it. There was no way I was capable of that. I was just like, I felt like I had a lobotomy. I was just dead. It's just like crying void. So
but you did have a survival instinct, because you said that you did contact your therapist or a coach, right? So
it's a coach who's now kind of my chief of staff.
That's a good move, by the way.
Yeah. I know. I actually can't get out without her anymore. I don't know if I think because we were in regular contact, I suspect that I didn't need to reach out. I suspect like in a regular dialogue, I had just kind of replied or said something that would have given her enough material. And I suppose she'd seen way more warning signs than I'd seen to be able to recognize that something was wrong. And she at that point took full control of the business and told me that I was taking a month off.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Which was amazing.
You know,
I mean, this is my point. This is my point.
That,
like absolutely incredible to have had that support. But I didn't fight that decision for half. Like there was no moment when I got a message saying, that's it, I'm in control, that I was like, no. I was just like, okay, great. So,
I'm grateful. Sorry.
No, I'm waffling. No, I'm waffling.
I'm really grateful that you described this with so much detail for a couple of reasons. The first one, it's important for me that I make a point about both. The first one is that normally people don't talk about the detail. They talk generically about, oh, I was depressed, I had whatever. So understanding what it means shows people that, you know what, oh my God, I've been through this myself. This is actually a thing, rather than excusing it or justifying it or just talking it away.
Yeah.
The second thing links to our prep call, because you said something, the short conversation we had to prepare for today, which was really interesting, that even though you've been through your own quite severe experience, you were somewhat dismissive about the severity of it, because you said to me, I wasn't really bad. I mean, I couldn't get out of bed for a month, but it's not like what other people experience. And so you actually took your quite fundamental experience and contextualized it, because other people might be going through something worse. And I would like us to just acknowledge the fact that what you had was something that other people will never have and will never be able to relate unless somebody talks about it to the level of detail that you do. So I think it's actually extremely important that you share this with us, and I'm really, really grateful.
Yes, I'm aware that I had a very life-changing incident, and I'm aware that it's serious enough that, trust me, I'm very keen not to go back there again. So I'm not dismissive of it at all. I think I just am aware that I come from a position of insane privilege in so many ways. And I just, and actually hearing myself talk, I feel like some of this actually comes back to the like extraordinary bar. I'm like, I feel like I've had everything really easy. Like I've had an incredible upbringing. I've come from a really affluent home. I've had amazing education. I've got a great support system around me, personally and professionally, that I'm constantly raising the bar for myself. And I think actually what you're referring to by me saying like, oh, I had this thing, but like other people have it worse, is sort of that extraordinary bar raising thing going on in real time, where I'm sort of always trying to remind myself that what I've done isn't good enough in some way. I don't know. It's just interesting you pull me up on that, because I think there's definitely that like that self-coaching that happens all the time to sort of put myself back into perspective, which I think is a bit of a double-edged sword.
I once walked away from a therapy session by thinking that my therapist told me I'm not as good at the therapy thing as I thought I was.
Yeah. There are always enough of triggers that tell us we're not good enough. And if they're not, we always have that kind voice inside of us. So no, I think that relationship with that voice inside of us is a tough one for many people.
This is Naked by the Future Farm.
Join us as we strip entrepreneurship to its vulnerable core.
Something about warning signals. And that was something I thought would be really good to go back to, because whether that's myself, even like when I was listening to, I was literally going through like mapping my days, and I was like, where am I? Like, and Nektarios, you were saying about having Jan and Feb like being quite tough. So if you talk today and to let's say founders who are in their own journey, or to the people who are listening today, how would you help them understand like what would be some of the warning signals they should definitely watch out for? And I'm assuming that today you are more equipped to give them some names and some labels. So what would those be?
I think they're highly personal, so I can only talk about my own.
Okay, let's go
and there. they might resonate or not. So there are kind of the warning signals that you'll read about on a blog. If we all went and Googled, like, how do I know when I'm anxious? The problem with that stuff is that it's kind of like I don't think you don't read it and think, oh, that's me. You read it and you just think like that's generic nonsense. So mine are very personal, and because they're really specific, I'm able to really notice them. So I have racing thoughts when I go to bed, when I'm in a bad place. So you'll hear people talk about racing thoughts. Generally, to me, that's like a bit silly. I have racing thoughts 99% of the day. That's how I operate at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I couldn't imagine not doing that, nor would I feel like myself if they went away. So it's specific to me if I can't switch them off before I go to sleep. So most of the time I'm able to like read a book, or even just like make dinner and do something else. Like I'm able to make sure that I go to bed and my head is in a space that's outside of my to-do list. If I can't do that, then that's a bit of a warning sign. If I can't sleep, that's another warning sign. And if I wake in the night, that's sort of like third level. So that's one area. The other area is around unfinished tasks and like observing myself being really distracted. So I'm absolutely brilliant at booking a restaurant, but not clicking confirm. So I'll like get to the page, I'll put the people in. This has happened, I reckon, 5 times where I've gone to a restaurant and they've been like, no, there's no table under your name. And I will be convinced I booked the table. And then they'll go in and they'll look at the booking platform and they'll be like, oh, you did enter your details, but you didn't give your card details, or you didn't confirm in the email that we sent you, or like whatever that last stage is. I'm just gone. I'm on to something else. And it drives my partner absolutely insane, as you can imagine, because it's really irritating. But that to me is another thing. Forgetting stuff is kind of the next version of that. So if I can't find my phone or my keys and I'm like constantly rummaging through my handbag over and over again, that to me suggests that things are pretty bad. And then, yeah, like the self-talk getting loud. And if the self-talk talks me out of things that I know are good for, like, if the voice in my head gets angry, then I stop exercising because it's like too difficult to deal with. And if that goes, then I kind of know that I'm falling out of a good rhythm. So those are the four that I really look for, like forgetting things, getting distracted, racing thoughts at night, and changes in routine. And those to me are quite specific, which enables me to be able to pinpoint that something's up. And I guess actually the other one, which is kind of all connected to it, is like constant, like flitting between my phone. So like changing tabs all the time, or just like opening and closing stuff on my phone, like the feeling, like the kind of mad need for a dopamine hit, where I like almost feel a bit breathless. I'm just like frantically jumping between stuff with no space. And like,
it sounds like an overload.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's kind of like
know,
if you start opening too many tabs, your laptop slows down. It's like, I know what that looks like when I'm trying to do too much in my brain and my brain starts to slow down. Yeah. So those are mine. And I think everyone has their own. And I would say that it's taken me, I honestly think in the last few months, so years after the breakdown, I've been able to really pinpoint them, both the triggers and then this like early signs of solution. So my recovery has been pretty long to get to a point of clarity and to like actually be in a position where I think I can build a sustainable support plan.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing. I mean, many of those resonate. I was just thinking maybe just doing it around here. Nektarios, like how many of those resonate with you, and would you add anything else on the top of this from your own bucket?
So linking it a little bit to going through the experience and not having the vocabulary to it. About 15 years ago, I went through a period where I now know it was depression, but I didn't know what it was when I was, and one of them was just not getting out of bed. Yeah. I would literally get up in the morning, wake up in the morning, call in sick because I just couldn't see myself just going to work. This was when I was still employed. And then doing nothing, but also not being ill, not being physically ill. It was just this inability just to step out of bed. And the way it translates to me now is the moment I see that I cancel meetings that are not essential, and there's a pattern, like I have like 3 back-to-back meetings that are not crucial, but I would have accepted them at some point because something, I thought there was some value in it. If I postpone them, and especially when there's a sequence of them, then I know that something's up. That's a very, very important for me. The sleep thing, I have a long history of not sleeping well, so that wouldn't be a trigger. But neglecting my diet, neglecting my exercise, all these things add up. My main signal is really when I feel like I'm making time to rest by canceling stuff and then filling this time with meaningless things, or watching 5 minutes of a Netflix show and then going to the next 5 minutes of the next Netflix show, but not committing to stuff. That's a clear sign of something's up.
Interesting. Like that neglect also. Yeah. Like I think that's a really strong one for,
and the inability to focus. Yeah. What about you,
like, yeah, I was just thinking like what is sort of in my own personal bucket. I think there is one more thing which is a little different from what you guys mentioned, which is I get very easily emotionally triggered. So when, small things that usually you can handle very well, but when I'm like in that space, that thing happens and I can blow up. So now I have that self-reflection, like literally it can manifest itself into either tears or we go into fight. Like I'm ready to, like just being in an emotional discourse with someone for quite a ridiculous thing. And people are looking at you like, what is happening? Like what, right? So that being easily triggered is certainly one. I think that I could really relate to the white noise thing in terms of like, and it's sort of like a weird thing for me that I disappear. Like I don't respond to, like, the idea of receiving WhatsApps and the idea of me needing to respond. I just, and it's so interesting because it comes with a feeling of like, it's okay. Like I just, with a very peaceful actually sense inside, just let go. And there's a realization, like there's a voice inside which is saying like, hey, like some of these things are actually important, but I'm just letting go. Like that part of you that is, I don't know whether that's an internal survival mechanism or protection as well, which is saying, hey, just disconnect from the world. So I think that wide noise and the disconnect that happens somehow automatically in my body and in my mind, it sort of even feels like a little bit out of control, even though it's paradoxical because I feel like the body is starting to take a control. To say like, no, like, F off this 20 messages, or it's 20 plus for sure. So yeah, these were some on the top. Anything?
I think the point is,
yeah,
sorry. It is what Lottie said to me is really important. And it's ultimately partly what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing is we don't people to go and read a book or read a blog post and go, well, these are not my boxes, so therefore this doesn't apply to me. It's the whole point is it's a very personal experience.
Yeah.
And we try to get people to get to a point where they can actually listen to the signals in their own bodies and in their own lives. Because we really want people to get to a point of self-check-in and self-awareness as a starting point for any kind of journey of recognition and healing. When you talked about it yourself, it sounded like you were surprised by what happened to you. So was there a routine or an awareness about actually checking with yourself beforehand?
Nope.
Okay.
Literally none. It was like, yeah, none. It was how hard can I push myself on kind of every front? Like I'd gone through a breakup a couple of years before that, which I think had really destabilized me. I was trying to build a business. I'd been living in Delhi and I'd moved back to the UK and I was living out of a suitcase in different people's like house sitting and couch surfing and stuff. So I had no home. I'd torn up my framework for stability and I was putting everything into building a business that was really all about volume of output at that point. There's different points in a business where I think there's like more, like the place I'm at now, there's much more value in strategic thinking and there's much more value in my headspace. But in those early stages, it was literally volume of emails I could reply to was kind of correlated to revenue. And so it was absolutely just in like a go mode. And no, there was no break at all. And I think I did it at a time where there was too much going on, but I really needed to work very hard for a period of time. Like I would not have got to where I've got to if I hadn't absolutely slammed myself for 24 months. So no, there was no like thinking about me at all. I thought I'd be fine. So I was really surprised.
But hearing you to say that reflection of like, I really, really needed to do the 24 months and like really hustle. There was a part of me which was thinking like, are we saying here that actually, you know what, in order to get somewhere, there is a price to pay? I hope that's not what we are saying.
No.
So maybe
that's not what we're saying.
How would you look at this today?
I think that it's all about context. So I think that there are things in modern society that enable us to do hard things, like relationships, where you have a stable partner who is able to like emotionally soften some of the blow, but also like physically make sure you're fed. Like there's a partnership that can do all kinds of things to help make that possible. There's community and a sense of home that can again be like this home is like a washy woolly concept, right? And there's a lot of value in the idea of having a place of home. There's also something really practical about knowing where your stuff is and not having like the mental load of being like, I don't know how the washing machine works and I'm nervous that I'm going to break someone else's crockery. There's a genuine impact of that. And the community feeling of, I can borrow milk, but also I'm not going to get burgled. And it's just like, there are lots of things that can be true that can give you a good foundation. And I had none of those things at that time. So I'm definitely not saying you have to have a breakdown to achieve anything, for sure. I'm saying that you do have to work really hard, and I still work really, really hard. And I still think that to get stuff done, you do have to work hard. And I think there are better times in your life than others to do that. And things to just like keep, if you're going into a really like killer period, I think it's really important to just put some checks in place that, you can cope.
That you're ready and you have the support system. Yeah. It sounded like the safety security layers of the Maslow pyramid that were missing for you at that time.
And so that in like an immediate sense, but also below that, you've got reserves that are either worn quite thin or are quite healthy. So I'd like thrown myself around the world a lot. I'd gone through lots of turbulent personal stuff. I don't think I was in a particularly robust place. And that's why what I think is important about that is it's not, are you robust this month? It's like, okay, over the last 5 years, like what's the context into which I'm coming into this phase? So I think for lots of reasons, my foundations were pretty rocky.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's more than interesting. It's wonderful hearing you talk about this because you provide the context that is really needed, which is these things don't happen in isolation. It compounds, right? Because if you have a stable personal life and a stable financial situation, a stable relationship and all these things, then you can deal with some of these blows better. And this is why we think recognizing the signals is important, because these are the signs that show you something's off, right? I thought it's also interesting, you talked about addiction in a previous conversation. When you have these things happen in your life, you also become somewhat aware about instabilities that can be caused. It may not affect you directly, but it's all still there, right? I'm curious to hear a little bit about what you did when you realized, when you had the support, when you've been through that period of not getting out of bed, your brain not working. And you mentioned briefly, it's like a walk to the tree and then next day walk a little bit further. So what were the first steps you took consciously towards getting better?
I had like a no screen time rule. So I did not look at my laptop and looked at my phone as little as humanly possible. I remember being really amazed by how many people had very practical advice. So it's funny, maybe it's changed a little bit even in 3 years, but at the time I felt like no one was talking about this stuff. And there was a guy who I was doing some work for who I called and said, I need to take a month off. I think I've had a breakdown. And he was like, okay, I'm going to send you my breakdown list now. I'll speak to you in a month. And I was like, right, wow. And he had just like on his phone, like a notes thing of like what to do if you have a mental health episode, like his own experience in that way that you do for, it's like, if I was like, I want some Athens tips, you might like forward me your notes thing. And it was like that. And one of them was get a massage, because there's something about like releasing tension physically that can have a mental impact. So I did that, but I was like not looking at my phone. So I remember calling my boyfriend and saying, I need you to book me a massage. Like, here's my card. I can't look at my phone. Like I really couldn't look at a screen. It was really not migraine, but I just could not do it. So it was all like, who could I phone to like ask to do stuff? I read a book about antidepressants and how they don't work, which was not that helpful. I did take some antidepressants, but I don't know if they worked because the book said they didn't work. What else did I do? I did a meditation course that was hell, but at least it was like it was like a 7-day intensive online meditation course, which was like 4 hours a day of watching someone. And I couldn't look at the screen, so I turned the screen off. But that's what I'm thinking. Audio.
That you loaded a screen on yourself.
I know, but it was just like I remember just like having it going on. It was basically just sort of someone chanting, and I did a bit of sitting on the floor. And like, it was just a sort of muddle of these sort of things. I baked a cake really badly one day. I'm not good at baking, but I needed to do stuff with my hands. So it's like a combination of a bit of reading when I was feeling better, a bit of walking, a bit of trying to do physical stuff. And that was sort of it. Like, no exercise, definitely no exercise, trying to eat as much as I could, but I remember being completely disinterested in food. And then it just kind of began to move in my brain, and then it was baby steps back to work. So I went to the woman who'd been helping me. I went to her house for dinner, and we had which was like a big thing, but like got a cab to the other side of London, had like a kind of an hour and a half with her, just like talking through what had happened, and then had some dinner and got a cab back, and sort of like did a lot of napping after that to get over it. And then I went back to a few hours a day at work, and then back to the office. Then I got an office. So I wasn't working from home. So I'd walk to the office, and I did 3 days a week in the office, kind of like 10 till 5 or 10 till 4 or whatever it was. And I had to send a selfie outside the office when I was leaving to like be accountable that I was logging off. So it was just like, it was a combination. I think just like tiny little, very instinctive baby steps, following curiosity. I remember baking the cake. I remember that really vividly because I didn't have a cake tin. So it was basically like a 4-day project, because I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the pound shop and I'm going to buy a cake tin. And that was like, okay, maybe I can, that was like a big thing. And then it was like, now I need to find flour. How am I going to? So I remember that really being that really helped, because it was like a project that I could break down into like very manageable bits.
We smile now, but I think we all can relate to the feeling, well, or we might, on when you are in it. Actually, the idea of going to the shop and buying something and being surrounded by people, and how do I get back, and it just feels like a whole universe, right, to figure out.
Yeah. And that's, the context of that is I was someone who would like work out every morning, run a business that was employing, I was like hiring a new person every month at that point. I was CMO for one company and founder of another. That's a big change. Like I was I'm a very, very capable, high output person. And for a baking tray to be like the pinnacle of a day is a pretty huge shift. But I think a lot of what I did in those, and we can talk a bit more about like how you solve this stuff, because I think it's really important that we make this positive and proactive. But a lot of the themes of separation from work, time away from screens, doing stuff with your hands, quality time with people you care about, where there's no expectation for you to do anything. I did a lot of just sitting on the sofa while friends came round, sat next to me, kind of put Deliveroo in front of me and left again. And I took huge comfort from that, even though I think I was terrible company. But a lot of those things are still like resources I'd go back to.
I wanted to actually ask you, like, what state till today, like what is Lottie's today self-care toolkit? Like what's in there that you actively use?
I find the word self-care, I find all of that like self-care, self-love, well-being stuff quite gross. And I find it really difficult as a language, because I think it's really self-involved. I think that like I don't have children yet, but I can only think for my female friends who are working mums, the idea that like self-care is another thing they're meant to be doing. Like I can't imagine the pressure that puts on them. They're like, I can't even begin to function, let alone meditate and do yoga. Like that. So I think we've got to be really careful of that language. So I've like hard coded some routines into the way I live that keep me in a good place. And then I've got some tools that I use when I'm feeling rocky. So sleep is incredibly important to me now, and really wasn't pre the breakdown. Like I used to think I'd basically just set my alarm at earlier and earlier and earlier so that I could get more and more work done, irrespective of how tired I was. So that would be like, I'd start work at like 4 a lot. And as a result, I was just completely exhausted. So now 8 hours sleep is pretty mandatory. And so often that means like it's like as simple as setting it. When I get into bed, I set Alexa to wake me up in 8 hours time. I don't set it to wake me up at a particular time. And that for me is like a clear statement that that's what comes first. And if that means that I miss my gym class because by the time I wake up, I'm not going to my gym class, that's absolutely fine. Like, because sleep is the most important. I then put exercise in my diary. That's non-negotiable. I'll move meetings for it. There's not really any meeting that I wouldn't rejiggle if I had to be able to get the movement I need in. I walk as much as possible. So take lots of calls, to lots of meetings as walking calls, so that it means that I can get more movement in, which I find really helpful. So it's all about taking a really busy life and putting the well-being like in it, not expecting it to be another chore.
I hear you on the embedded part. So it's like
I find that really difficult. I don't want to like find time to meditate, but I can force myself to not look at my phone when I'm walking somewhere, or to like do some like deep breathing or in other stuff, but it's not going to be its own. It's got to fit. It's got to multitask. So that's like how I operate. And then I'm quite aware of my social battery, so just not overcommitting. I know that I'm really extroverted, so I do need lots of social contacts, but I also need enough time alone, and balancing that. So that's kind of like all the embedded part. And then very recently I've got to a kind of sort of plan for how I address like an oncoming wobble that I'm quite proud of, because it's very new in my brain. So I'm like, when something's just clicked and you're like, I am so clever because I've got a new framework for this, which I wrote down to remind myself. But like, and this came to me really like literally 2 weeks ago. I was on a skiing holiday with my family, and we'd had a big family night out the night before, and it had been like really fun but quite boozy and really late, and I was trying to manage my day job while I was on holiday, so I was getting up super early, and I woke up on the Thursday morning and I was like, I'm gone, and I had all the warning signs, and I felt emotional and just all over the place, and I did my plan, and it worked. So the first thing was that I needed alone time, so I said to my partner, like, you go off, I just need to be on my own for half a day. So he went off with my brother and my dad, which is like, that's quite a statement to say, I brought you on a family holiday, I made you pay for this, and now I'm just going to ignore you.
It's a good training for him also, in a different way.
But it's also like, it's me saying, I know what I need. And I know that this isn't fun short term, but this is what has to happen so that I can be back quicker. So alone time is the first, movement is the second, and it has to be like non-competitive movement. So it's not going for a run or anything that could have any kind of failure complex. It's just moving. So going for a walk, ideally going for like a cold water swim is the absolute peak. If I can get myself in cold water, it makes such a difference.
Beautiful.
So alone time, movement, nature. So skiing was perfect. So I was like, I'm going to go skiing on my own because it's movement and it's in nature and I'm going to be alone. Rest is the fourth thing, which I think is super important. So get back to bed with a book, have a nap, turn the world off for 90 minutes, 2 days, whatever you need, but rest. And then the fifth thing is carbs. So I really, when I get sad, I get really hungry, and I know we talk about this, but I think when my brain is really strained, I need food that makes me feel like full and safe and really grounded. And yeah, exactly. And so so like sometimes it's a pastry, sometimes it's a bowl of pasta, but I actually find that if I do those 5 things, so alone time, nature, movement, rest, and carbs, I can kind of put the world to rights. And it was just really exciting to me that I did it in sort of half a day. And that was on like a very minor moment. I had like quite a minor response, which was like, okay, give me till lunchtime and then I'll be back. But it's given me so much confidence that I could replicate that on a much bigger scale. Like that can be an 8-week life plan. If I have to eat pasta for 8 weeks and that's what puts me back together, and I'm resting and I'm in nature and I'm alone and I'm getting my movement in, like, yeah, it's made me feel so much more in control.
In control. That was the word that I felt also. We love frameworks. I love frameworks. But it's quite powerful. Like, listen, I even just getting the energy from you right now. Like, I think that you found something that works for you for now, right? I mean, so I think that's what also
for now. And again, it comes back to like the privilege point. Like, you know, I'm at that time in life where all of my friends have young babies, and I can just hear them being like, sure, you need alone time. Like, all right. So I get that it's not something that everyone can do.
Unique to you.
It's unique to me, and it's about taking the glimpses that you can get them. But I think knowing what it is that will work, even if you can't get to it, to be able to communicate to someone else, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I need. Can you help me get there? Is just such huge progress from not being able to express what's going on in your head.
It's so when you mentioned the word framework, Lottie, the first thing I thought is Vladdy will like this. The second thing I thought is I'm curious to hear what it is, and then I will try and see if I can relate to that without putting the framework umbrella over it, because I don't like frameworks. But the key thing, it does go back to two things, right? It goes back to your self-awareness, and you're actually in this process of establishing. It's a continuum, right? Okay, right now in my life, these are the things that I realize I need to get better. But the second thing is also being able to communicate this. Being able to say to people, okay, these are my needs. And this applies to everything. Most problems, I think, in life is because we can't communicate our needs to other people. And then we start operating on assumptions and expectations and blah, blah. So this is just wonderful, because it for us, very selfishly, from the Future Falls perspective, you talk about, this is what's happened to me. This is how I experienced it. These were the signals that I kind of missed. And these are the things I'm doing now based on my learnings and my self-awareness to get better. But the key in all of this is your personal experience, and these are your personal learnings. But I think you might be comforted to hear that what you're describing is your personal version of what most people actually need, which is this recognition of, I have something that is important to me, so I need to feed it. And the carbs is wonderful, because I can't believe anybody can get better by eating salad and grilled fish as a Greek. But the key thing, and I love this, is you being able to say, you know what, to your partner, this might not be how you imagine the holiday to be, but we will both benefit from this, because I know that these are my needs, which is just beautiful.
And so on a good day, I can communicate that to someone else, right? I know that there'll be days in the future where I can't do that, because it's a safety net. Like, I'm creating instructions. So I know there'll be times where I can't remember what the fuck to do. All I know is that I'm really stressed and I feel really anxious and my brain is really struggling. And at that moment, I'm not going to be able to do the processing to work out what that plan is. And so it's the reassurance that I've got that like pre-written plan that someone can say to me, you know, you've told me in the past that this is what you need. So execute the plan. It's kind of like a will, right? It's like execute the plan that you wrote out for yourself when you knew. And I think it's kind of interesting what you're saying, that like, yes, some of that is common for other people, which is where it becomes really transferable. Because when I was in my really bad phase, one of the things that the woman that was supporting me did was ask me every day for my number. So if you're in a bad place, you find it very difficult to articulate how you're feeling. So right now I can talk quite eloquently about different states of emotional processing. As you said, when you asked me earlier, like, did I know what was going on? I had absolutely no idea, nor did I have any words for it. I just knew like bad. I kind of just like had a strong sense of like not good, but could not articulate it any more than that. And so I find the number framework really helpful. So if someone's in a bad place, you say to them like, how are you 1 to 10? And they don't need to do much processing to tell you how they're doing. Anything below like a 6 or 7, they don't need to be asked any more questions. They need instruction only. And so when I'm in that state, I need to be told that I'm going back to bed, and then I'm going for a walk in silence where no one's going to talk to me, and then I'm going to be given a pastry. Or whatever that equivalent is. And actually most of us need a version of that, which is instruction. And so I think there's a point about this framework, whatever. I agree with you. I'm actually useless at frameworks. There's a point of this, which is like giving accountability to the people around me, so that when I'm in a state where I need instruction, they can offer that for me. And I think maybe how it works for me is a good a blueprint as any, at least to try with someone who's in a similar place. Like I don't think I'm that far off.
We actually, you made me smile, because we actually have another guest on the show who was describing to actually writing down this blueprint. I think she used the term blueprint actually, and putting it on the doors of her room so that her housemaids are aware that if I'm doing this, this is what's happening for me, and this is what would help. So I think there are different ways how people are actually finding ways to communicate with others. Like, hey, please, if you can, keep me accountable or help me with, you know, the care. I actually feel like because we've been running now over an hour, but just one bonus question, which is sort of related to this. I feel like one of the things that entrepreneurs and founders, especially founders at whether they're CEOs, but they're at the leadership layer, what we struggle with often is we can maybe find a way, or we become better at communicating this to our loved one and the people we have at home. How do you, or have you found a way to communicate any of this to your team or to your co-founder? But I'm assuming you are a solo founder.
Yeah,
so how would
I'm
that
a solo
relate
founder. I mean, I don't know if it shows, but I'm pretty open about this stuff. So I talk about it at any opportunity. And I get that there's a world where you'd worry that like vulnerability might undermine you in some way. It's just not a world I entertain. Like I feel really lucky that I've never felt held back by a show of vulnerability. And I have real confidence that I only want to work or engage with people who respect that. And I worked for a family-run business in India for a while where there was zero tolerance of vulnerability, and I just thought it was horrendous. And like, I guess there's lots of things I'm insecure about, but I have no insecurity in the knowledge that if someone isn't comfortable with me sharing their stuff and wants to engage in this conversation, that I want nothing to do with them. Like that for me is totally fine. So yes, I talk about it all the time. Really happy for my team to talk about it. We have a very open culture around mental health, and can't imagine operating another way. Just not a world I want to be part of. I feel like there's like a nuance that I'm missing here. I'm being really dead. I'm just being really like, I'm like, yeah, I honestly just, that's how I feel. I just feel like it matters.
No, it comes across. It comes across.
I like the lack of nuance. I like the whole. It's uncompromising. This is what matters, and therefore, why do we need to be more nuanced about this? No, seriously, it made me feel all warm and gooey when you were talking about this, because that's the way I want to lead, and that's the way we talk about this in my co-founder relationship. So this is wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's a danger to over labeling stuff. I think there's a danger to a world where we, like, sometimes the self-care you really need is like a strong word to yourself to get out of bed and just get on with it. And I do know that. And that's why I think I have this like slightly anti-wellness thing, more about integration. So I think like the concern around talking about mental health might just be like a fear that things are going to get diluted, or that we're going to create issues when they don't exist, or we're going to give airtime to problems that aren't like real or whatever. I think there's absolutely a way through the middle, which is just like open and pragmatic.
I really love that integrated, embedded part. I think it just makes it part of the being. This is who we are. And I think,
like operate for sustainability. How do you build a life how do you build a way, and this is not where I'm at, this is my goal of the year, how do I build a way of working and operating where I could do this at this pace for 30 years? I'm still not there yet. I can do it for a bit longer, but I don't think I've got 30 years of this in me.
But it's interesting, it relates also, I feel like, to our bigger mission at Future Farm, because in some way we always felt like when people put the mental health and well-being of founders in a special box, it just relates to certain special conversations at the conferences, but it never sort of embedded in the, hey, this is the rewired system, it's 2.0, and in that 2.0, it's part of it. It's just, I think that's where I can find a lot of sense in what you're saying, and I think it makes it resonates. So I think it's a beautiful way maybe to also say thank you for a wonderful conversation and a lot of insights and the vulnerability and rawness.
Thank you, Lottie. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure. Thank you for having me.